What it do, fam? Welcome to the channel. I'm G. Lewis. And if this is your first time checking out the channel, I greatly appreciate it. And if you've been rocking with me and you are a subscriber, I greatly appreciate it. God bless. Get straight to it. 5 things that I wish someone would have told me when I was younger. Start off with number 1. Discover who you are as early as possible in life. Here's what I mean. Between junior high and high school, everybody's trying to find out who they are and where do they fit in. Most of the time, people gravitate toward people because they may be part of the in crowd. It's all more about an assimilation. Had I known this early on in life, I probably would have not made some of the knucklehead decisions that I made. It is what it is. But I bring that up because all too often we do that. And not just in our adolescent years, we continue to do that on throughout the course of our life. As children, I can understand it. You're trying to find your way. When you discover who you are early on in life, you probably would not have things that later on you look back on like, man, I wish I have those moments where I look back now and say, thank you, God. You were covering me that night. And my young, foolish self didn't even understand that you were carrying me, covering me and carrying me. As a young person, we don't think of those things. But when we get older, and if we are blessed to get older and be able to look back on things and process those moments, you have some moments of clarity where you be like, man, I wish I had an old head around me, man, that would have pulled my coattail and say, yo, young blood, you're doing way too much. You need to quit hanging with them boys, man. Them boys ain't nothing but trouble. But the reason we do that as teenagers is because we want to try to find out where we fit in. Nobody wants to be outcast or on the outside at that particular time in your life. I mean, kids really take it to heart. Once you discover who you are as early as you can in life, and you stand 10 toes on that, you have the confidence, and nobody can shake that confidence. Number 2, it's okay to say no. It's okay to say no to your friends and your circle of friends because you have that right. And stand 10 toes down on it and don't be apologizing for it. My mom decided to pick up and move my brothers and I to another neighborhood. But after school, I would always go back and hang out in my old neighborhood. Well, in my new neighborhood, I developed a new friendship with a kid that he and I had some things in common. So I would take him over there to my old neighborhood and hang out with me and some of my old friends. We were hanging out on the block probably about 8 or 9 o'clock at night. One of the guys had a joint. He sparked it up, hit it, started passing it around. When it came around to young blood that was standing there with me, because he was a year younger than me, I could see the look in his face. And I immediately took it. But I leaned over to him and I said, hey man, you know, bro, you ain't gotta hit this man to kick it, hang out. And I seen the relief in his face. So I just passed it on back to the other guys. And when it came back around, I was the buffer. When I caught it and I spun it back around. And years later, we got together. He was like, hey man, I remember years ago, man. You remember that time we was hanging out on the block and I had forgot all about that because, you know what I'm saying, it wasn't nothing for me to remember or think about. But he did. And he said, man, I remember you telling me you ain't got to hit this joint, man, to kick it. And he said, man, that meant a lot to me, man, because you could have easily tried to influence me to do that, but you didn't. And I said, wow, man, and I did that. Okay, well, I'm glad I did something, you know, constructive back then, you know, as it pertained to something like that, man. But he really respected that. And we remained cool all those years later, man. Number 3, find your passion and lock in. One day in elementary school, 6th grade, a band director from the junior high came to the elementary school to recruit kids to play in the band. He showed up to the school with this violin and a case. And he set that case in front of us kids and he opened it up and it had blue fake fur in the bottom of it. And there was this mahogany colored violin sitting there. I mean, it was shining. You look at it, you can see reflection in it, and the smell. It was just newness to it, man. I had never seen a real instrument in my life, let alone a violin. So I was stoked. So after school, I went home. And I couldn't wait to tell my mom what happened at school that day. But then I also told her I wanted a violin. And by that time, my brother happened to be passing by in the house, and he heard that. Now, without going too much into it, my brother was a street dude, through and through. I mean, when he heard that, he immediately stopped, and he gave me the business, and I began to feel bad about that, He tried to shame me into wanting to play the violin. But needless to say, I no longer had a passion for it because of what he was saying about people who played those type of things, white people and blah, blah, blah. Probably a couple other things that he mentioned too that didn't connect with me. But at the time, I felt kind of bad about that. Needless to say, I didn't get that violin. I don't think my mama wanted to buy that. I couldn't afford to buy that anyway. But the next year when I did get to the high school, I did get an instrument. My mom bought me a brass instrument and I played that, all through high school, junior high and high school. So, but at the time, he made me feel very bad about something that I wanted to do. It wasn't my passion yet, but music was my passion. Or let me put it like this. I used to love listening to music. And we had an old organ or something in the house or something, man. A toy organ or something like that. I think it might have been my little baby sister's, instrument. But it played. It made, it actually was an instrument. So I was able to hear things on the radio and be able to pick out the notes. So I had a good ear, man. I had a keen ear for tones and stuff. So I did later end up getting into music, but that developed my passion, being able to hear and tinker out notes and tones and play little melodies that I heard on the radio. So I didn't know it at the time, but music was becoming my passion. So by the time I was getting ready to go to junior high and this guy came recruiting and I wanted that instrument, my brother come in that house and what he said, he shut that down. He shut that down. But never let your passion be determined by other people as well, man. If you feel passionate about something, follow your heart. Follow your heart, but be wise and smart about it. That's what I would have told my younger self. Be wise, be smart about it. Learn all that you can learn about that particular trade or that passion or whatever, and stay dialed in and focused. Now, number 4. Money does not equate to happiness. It doesn't. After my military career, I decided to move back to Mississippi. About the last year of my military career, I started preparing myself to get back into music. I bought me this very expensive instrument. It was a keyboard made by Sonic. Anybody who's a musician, old heads watching this, you're probably familiar with the first line of Sonic sampling keyboards, workstations. I bought one when I was in the military. And when I would get off work in the afternoon, I would go home and I would read the books and I would teach myself not only the electronic aspect of working with this new technology, but also with teaching myself, music. I was furthering my music, my understanding of music, man. And by the time it got ready for me to get out, I said, I'm going back to Mississippi and I am going to become a rapper / producer. Now, somebody who's watching this now, a young person, they may say, so, ain't nothing crazy about that, nothing far-fetched about that. But it was during that time that I said I was going to do it. We're talking about 1988, 89, 87, during the golden era of hip-hop. Rap music was only coming out of New York City. It wasn't even bubbling up or blowing up out of LA at this time, because rap originated from New York. All the old heads watching this, y'all already know this, but I just want to share a little bit of the history for maybe some young heads watching this, just to get put this in context. When I decided I was going to get out the military and go back home to Mississippi and get into music and become a rapper and producing and making music, we're talking about a time where it didn't exist outside of New York. So it was stupid for me, most people would say, to even have that dream to do that. But nonetheless, that's what I did. It was like I went back into the desert and I brought the rainmaker with me. And he danced around the campfire. And lo and behold, not only did I started making music in an area that this was unheard of before, but I also started making a name for myself and some money, and getting notarized by Billboard magazine and some other things as an independent producer. Then I started developing other aspiring artists within my region. But I'm bringing that up for a reason. I got out the military with that passion that I had, but my goal and my reason for doing what I was doing now turned into making money. Now I'm watching MTV during this time frame, Yo MTV Raps, MTV, Cribs and all this. And I'm watching these big old extravagant homes. I'm watching these guys with all this, big, gold chains and all this stuff, man. All I saw was opulence, flash, money, luxury. Because you got to understand, rap music was starting to take kids out of the hoods of New York, and they were able to move their families out of the ghettos, and they were making a lot of money, and they had no problems showing you that they were making a lot of money. So now my passion turned into an obsession to making money. When I got back to Mississippi, it took years for me to build what I built, but I never got to that type of money. But my passion kept me driving to keep doing what I was doing. I maintained a day job, but at nighttime, this is what I was doing. I had a studio, and I was making music and doing those things. I seen a lot of people along the way who got lost in the sauce. I noticed that a lot of these guys, man, didn't appear happy. Smoking all the time, drinking all the time, and you could tell that nobody was home most of the time, man, when you look at it in their faces. Just recently, I was watching an interview that Tony Robbins was having with this guy, and he said that a lot of his millionaire friends are miserable people. He said they have all this money, all this abundance of wealth, and they are not happy. And his theory is they are not happy because once they reach the apex of what it is that they were searching for, they went from grinding full time to obtain all this wealth to now I got to maintain this wealth. For some, it was maintaining the wealth. For others, I got to get more. So he said they never really took the time and opportunities to enjoy what they have created. And I have witnessed some of that too. I didn't know why these guys was getting stoned out their head, man, and they got all this money and all these things. But what he said made a lot of sense. The drive and the grind to get to where they got to, speaking about his millionaire and billionaire friends, that grind to get to where they got to was accomplished. But now it went to having greed where they need more billions, or it got to a point was like, this is not all I thought it is. And now I got to keep up this image. It's not a facade. It's not fake, but I got to keep up this lifestyle that I've created for myself. That's why I say, I wish somebody had told me when I was younger, dog, money does not equal happiness. Now, number 5, which ties into that. Spend less, save more. If you work in the hospitality industry, or whether you are in corporate America, it's the same principle. Save more than you spend. You do not need a Gucci belt, which may take up a month of your income. If you are working in the service industry, it may take a whole month of your pay to buy a belt. When you can go to Walmart and buy a belt off the rack. Both do the same thing, right? If I'm wrong, let me know now. If there's something new that a Gucci belt can do that a regular belt can't do, then please put me up on game. I might have been sleeping under a rock, in the bottom of a tree all these years, and I don't know, but I'm just saying, spend less, save more. I remember seeing a story about this guy who worked as a carrier, And when the guy retired, he had, I believe, like $1.5 million in the bank. And the reason he had that money is because he saved that money and he was putting it in ETFs and other little safe investment accounts over those years. And by the time he got ready to retire from driving that truck, I think he worked for UPS or something. The man had accumulated $1.5 million in wealth. Brothers, young buck, you don't have to be a rapper, a baller to have that kind of money. It may take you quite some time to make that kind of money. But if you're smart like this guy I'm talking about was, take that money that you got and put it into investment accounts, and don't try to go out and buy the flashy, opulent, showy things that you probably know you can't afford, and you may be only buying it just so you can have people looking at you and telling you that, hey man, you're doing real good in life. That's called assimilation. You're trying to fit in. Don't try to fit in. Don't try to become part of the in crowd. Be a leader. Hell, even if you only lead nobody but yourself, at least do that. Because when you get to the age or when you're getting closer to retirement, you'll feel better about yourself. You'll feel better about the decisions that you've made. And you'll probably look back on your younger years and say, you know what? I'm glad somebody was able to tell me those things, because it saved me from bumping my head, taking detours on dark alley roads, running into danger. I'm G. Lewis. To my next video, take care of yourself. And as always, fam, take care of your people. God bless. I'm out.